Hello, and welcome to Medallion's SDIG training video. This video will focus on the SDIG. Unlike the DIG training video, which includes both the SDIG and GDIG gauge. This video is also going to focus on the diagnostics, calibration, and configuration abilities of the SDIG. It will not cover anything from the GDIG gauge. To help you follow along in the video, you can download the SDIG manual by following this link. Also, if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, don't hesitate to call us at 866-492-3686 or email us at techsupport@medallionis.com. This training course will cover one specific SDIG gauge, which means that all options for all SDIG gauges may not be covered under this video. You can look through the manual to see all functions of the SDIG gauges. This video will cover the high points of the SDIG, and you should be able to maneuver around any SDIG gauge after watching this video. Powering up the SDIG takes less than 4 seconds. As it powers up, you'll see the needle move. In these gauges, you'll see the needle jump and vibrate for a second. Some gauges may have a more predominant sweep, where it'll move to the maximum location and back to the minimum location, and then finally at the location where it needs to be. The gauge will display all of its segments at first as a test, but then open to the normal operating display. During normal operation, you can program the LCD to display the hours, sea temperature, depth, direction, and battery voltage. You do this by pressing the left or right button during normal operation. The right button scrolls forward while the left button scrolls backwards. You can also configure the gauge to remove some of these items from the list in settings. We will talk about how to do that in a moment. To get into settings, you have to press both buttons at the same time for approximately 1 second. When you see settings displayed, then release the buttons. Once released, the display will go to units. This is the first setting in the main menu. Pressing the right or left button will scroll through the different settings. The right button will scroll forward while the left button will scroll backwards. The different settings are units, calibration, diagnostics, engine, fuel, configuration, and software version. To exit out of programming, go to the word exit on the list and then press the right button for approximately 1 second. This will take the display back to normal operation. To enter into the Units section, you will press the right button for approximately 1 second until you see English displayed. In the Units section, you will program the gauge to measure using the English system or the metric system. To do this, simply press the right or left button until the system you desire is displayed. Once it is displayed, press and hold the right button for approximately 1 second. When the display goes back to Units, then the gauge is programmed. Next, we're going to talk about calibration. Pressing the right button will advance us to the calibration menu. As we press and hold the button for approximately 1 second, then the display will advance into the calibration mode. In this gauge, the options are sea temp, fuel level, trim, and reset. The sea temp setting allows you to adjust the water temperature. In case you notice that the temperature on the gauge is different from the actual temperature, pressing the right or left button will allow you to create an offset. The left button adjusts it down while the right button adjusts it up. Once you have the adjustment set, then press the right button for approximately 1 second until you see OK on the display. Now, press the right button and it will go back to the calibration menu. Next, press the right or left button to advance to the other option. Pressing the right button for a second will bring you into that setting. Right now, we're in the fuel calibration. This calibrates the level of fuel that is in the tank. When you enter into this mode, you'll see Fuel E. The gauge is now looking for the empty state of fuel in the tank. If the tank is actually empty, press and hold the right button for approximately 1 second. Now it will advance to Fuel H. Again, the gauge is now waiting for the half-full state of the fuel in the tank. If the tank is actually half full, press and hold the right button for approximately 1 second. Now it will advance to Fuel F. The gauge is now looking for the full state of fuel in the tank. If the tank is actually full, press and hold the right button for approximately 1 second. Now the gauge will display OK fuel, meaning that the gauge is set for the fuel level. It is a common mistake for people to calibrate this incorrectly. They will calibrate the empty, half full, and full position without adjusting the actual level in the tank. When they do this, they are actually telling the gauge that these 3 points of reference are identical. This will cause the needle for the fuel level to act erratically because, as the fuel level changes, the gauge can't determine where the true level is set because it thinks that all points of reference are equal. The good news is that there are two ways to easily fix this. You can go through the calibration method, just like before, which will overwrite what was just done, or you can reset this calibration to a factory reset, which we'll go through in just a moment. When you do a factory reset, then you will reset all settings, not just the fuel calibration. Just remember when you calibrate this that you must calibrate it with the physical position of the float in the fuel tank. Once you see OK Fuel, press the right button for a moment to take you out of this calibration. Now, we're going to calibrate the location of the trim. Just like the fuel level, we have seen many people adjust this calibration without actually changing the location of the engine. Remember, while you're calibrating this, you must calibrate it with the physical location of the engine. As you enter this mode, you'll first see trim up. Now the gauge is looking for the location of the engine at its highest point. Once the engine is in the proper location, press the right button for approximately 1 second. Now it will display trim down. After lowering the engine to its lowest point, press the right button for approximately 1 second. Now the gauge will display OK trim. Pressing the right button momentarily will exit you out of this calibration. Remember to only calibrate the trim while the engine is in the physical location of the setting you're calibrating. Once you're out of the trim calibration, advance to reset. This is where you can reset the calibration and settings to a factory reset. This is the way that you can fix a fuel or trim calibration issue if any calibration was done incorrectly. The factory settings should be close enough for the needles on the gauge to work properly. To reset the settings, just press the right button for approximately 1 second until you see OK Reset appear on the gauge. Once that is done, then you can exit that mode and advance to diagnostics. Once you're in diagnostics mode, you'll be able to confirm if the gauge is actually receiving the data that it needs to be receiving in order for it to be functioning properly. For example, if the needle for the fuel level isn't working, how do you know if it's the needle that's malfunctioning or if the gauge is receiving the data correctly? The diagnostics mode helps you to see that data. The different options in this mode are battery voltage, fuel level, trim location, tachometer, speed, engine, or the ECU, GPS, SCEM, which means Suzuki Check Engine Module, or a function called Show All. Some of these modes will only display a number. The number isn't as important as it is to see the number change when the item changes. So if the fuel float changes location, then the number in diagnostics mode should change. If the speed changes, the number in diagnostics mode will change. If you ever see 2 dashes displayed, then that means that there is no data being received. When you get to the engine, GPS, or SCEM section, it will either acknowledge with OK or with No. OK means that it is communicating, while No means that it is not communicating. Show All is an option that will allow you to bring back any faults that may have displayed on the gauge but cleared. It will bring them back during normal operation. The engine section is probably the most important part of the gauge's setup. If the engine or engine type is set up wrong, then the gauge will not operate correctly. There are 4 options under the engine setup. They are Mercury, Yamaha, Honda, or Suzuki. Notice the small circle between the R and C. This is telling you that the Mercury engine is currently programmed as the engine for this gauge. To change this, press any button to display your desired engine. Let's say that we want to program the Honda engine. When we see Honda on the display, then press the button for approximately 1 second. Now the type of Honda engines will be displayed. Simply press either button until the correct engine type is displayed. Now press the right button for approximately 1 second, or until the dot is displayed. This indicates that this engine type is now programmed for the gauge. After approximately 2 seconds, the gauge will exit the engine mode. The next mode is the fuel mode. This mode tells the gauge how the fuel level sensor is going to communicate to it. There are 2 different ways that it can communicate. It will either use analog or a digital signal, or N2K. The analog signal means that the fuel level sensor is connected directly to the gauge. This uses a signal that is in resistance. The needle of the gauge uses the resistance to know where it is supposed to be pointing to. If the fuel level sensor is communicating with a digital signal, or N2K, then it is communicating the information through the engine network, which is referred to as the NEMA 2000 network, N2K. In this mode, you can see a dot or small circle that indicates how the gauge is currently set up. Simply scroll to the desired setting, press and hold the right button for approximately 1 second, and the setting will change. If you don't want to change anything, then use the exit to leave the setting as it is. Now, we are going to talk about the configuration mode. This mode allows you to enable or disable what you can view while in normal operating mode. Remember when I talked about the different options that you can view on the LCD display while in normal operating mode? Under the configuration mode, you can program the gauge with which items you want or don't want to see. The different options are C-temp, depth, or heading. C-temp is the temperature of the water. Depth is the depth of the water below the boat, and heading is the direction that the boat is headed. Notice that the battery voltage and hours are not available under configuration. This is because they will always be an option to view during normal operating mode. This mode allows you to include or exclude the other options. To change the setting, you will press the right button until the plus or minus sign changes. The plus sign means that you will be able to view it, while the minus sign means that you will not be able to view it. This option is available because if the boat doesn't have a transducer installed, then it will not display the sea temperature nor the depth. If the boat doesn't have a GPS installed, then it will not display the direction that the boat is heading. The last mode that we are going to talk about is the software version. This will only be needed if someone from Medallion asks you which software the gauge is loaded with. When you enter this mode, the software will automatically scroll through the version in different segments. Once it is done scrolling through the complete version of software, it will simply go back into the main menu. Thank you for joining us for the SDIG training video. We hope you found the exploration of the various diagnostics, calibration, and configuration options both informative and engaging. Should you have any questions, feedback, or concerns, please don't hesitate to reach out. You can call us at 866-492-3686 or send an email to techsupport@medallionis.com. We're here to help.